You are now tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, Fambase Sports. Join Jarek Hall and Kari Demos as they take you around the world of sports every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Buffalo Fambase Sports. My name is Jarek Hall, and today we're going to be talking about Ravens Bills pregame talk. This is going to be an exciting one, ladies and gentlemen, because the Buffalo Bills, after going pretty much losing to the Miami Dolphins, and now the fact that they're 3-1, we now have to talk about the Buffalo Bills in this light, guys. I'm sorry, 2-1. I apologize, but we now have to kind of talk about the Buffalo Bills in this particular light, right? Is the fact that the Buffalo Bills were deemed as this killer of a football team. Like, they were deemed as this pretty much undestructive monster. And now the fact that they could potentially go 2-2, we already know how the media likes to, they like to switch, they like to turn on the Buffalo Bills. And the question is that really a good thing if that does happen? Now, hoping and praying that this is not a loss, but you just never know. I mean, this is the NFL. Crazier things have happened. One thing that I think we have to talk about that a lot of people are not really doing it so far, before we can kind of get started and we can really start to get ready for our actual gaming, is the fact that weather is on the line here, right? The reason why I say weather is because it's going to be rainy. It's going to be a very, very nasty, man. The weather is going to be extremely nasty. The conditions are really not going to be there. So that's where I do kind of question, what type of game this is going to be, guys? Like, seriously, like, what type of game is this going to be? Is this going to be a game that could potentially be high scoring, or is this going to be if you factor in these nasty conditions, is it going to be a game where it's going to be relying on the run game? Like, we look at the Buffalo Bills in the past when it comes to these nasty conditions, where I think a lot of people can go back to the Patriots game back in 2020, where it was 14-0, where it was 14-10, where Buffalo had to rely on the run game to win. The Kansas City Chiefs game in the rain, where Buffalo tried to really push it. They tried to establish more of a passing attack, but it really couldn't work in those weather conditions. And it was pretty much of a low-scoring football game. I think we can go back to even the Ravens game back in the playoffs. That was kind of more of a slobber knocker type of game. Nasty, windy conditions. The Patriots game back in 2021, where it was the infamous, I think, again, 14-10, where New England rushed for over 300 yards. So we've seen these sort of nasty conditions before, and really just kind of how this Brian Dable / Ken Dorsey offense, they couldn't really rely on that much on the run game because they had no running game. They were so reliant on Josh Allen and their passing attack that even if it wasn't really working, they would still try to push through it and try and see if they could just crack a wrinkle through a defense. But once a defense really figures you out, that's the question. That's the question about whether can Ken Dorsey make these sort of adjustments. But again, before I kind of get into that, what's up, Apex? By the way, shout out to Apex. Again, check out Apex, check out Mikey. Those guys make incredible content. These guys are regulars when it comes to the Buffalo fan base community. Again, Mafia Sports Report, check him out. Also check out Apex's channel. These guys, again, make incredible content. What is going on? What's going on, Katara? Appreciate you for stopping by. But yeah, guys, like I said, hopefully we can get the win. But I will say this as well. What's going to happen with these nasty conditions? I think that's the craziest part that I think a lot of people have to ask for. They really do have to ask for, because man, oh man. I mean, 64 degrees, not bad, but it's going to be windy. It's going to be rainy. That's going to be the question right here, guys. I think another question I have to go into this game is injuries. Buffalo has a lot of injuries going into this game, and a lot of kind of questionable decisions that Sean McDermott has to make if these guys are game time ready decisions, right? One of them being Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver was a very, very crucial part of Buffalo's defensive line that they were missing last week. Now, Miami didn't run over Buffalo all day, but in the red zone, you're missing guys like Jordan Phillips. You're missing guys like Ed Oliver. You're missing a lot of those guys. So if Ed Oliver is ready to go, if he's healthy or close to being 100%, if he's ready to go, that's going to be a big factor for Buffalo. Now, I think another thing too that ever since really the Tua injury is, do we rush these players? no matter what injury it is, we decide to kind of rest these players for our own benefit. I think that's kind of more of a moral, that's kind of more of a morals, more of an ethical type of question. But that is something to kind of consider, that it is something that kind of considers that, because we're going against the Ravens football team, ladies and gentlemen, that they are very, very RPO based. They focus a lot on the immediate throws, but Lamar Jackson, I mean, we've seen these receivers. I mean, they're hitting crossing routes, hitting go routes. They're destroying teams up the seam. They're starting to stretch defenses with their downfield passing, and that is something that is concerning, because before that, it was simply just immediate routes, and maybe it can set you up with a few deep shots here and there. But Lamar Jackson started to become one of the best deep throwers in all of football, and that opens up the run game. Remember, J.K. Dobbins is coming. J.K. Dobbins played last week. He's going to get more touches. Justice Hill is going to get more touches. Lamar Jackson, we all know what he can do in the run game as far as again, as far as RPO, as far as RPO read option based, RPO read option based schematics. Like, we all know what he can do in those certain situations. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Buffalo can play it, especially if you don't really have the big dogs, the beasts up front to really kind of challenge that, because we are going against a Ravens offensive line that is way better than Miami's offensive line. It's an offensive line that, for the most part, as far as run blocking wise, they're one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. And a big reason why is because of what Lamar Jackson can do. J.K. Dobbins, if fully healthy, what he can do as far as his physicality and their deep running back stead. And then the offensive line, which is extremely physical up front. Another thing that I think we have to kind of touch upon real quick, guys, again, is the rest of these injuries, right? Jordan Poyer is questionable. We all know Micah Hyde's out. Christian Benford's a guy that's going to be out again. That was more of a backup cornerback. You're now going to have to be relying on Cam Lewis once again to see if he can step up. But even he's questionable, right? For the most part. Then you have to kind of rely on some of the other guys as well, right? Dawson Knox, he's out. You're going to have to rely a lot on Reggie Gilliam. You're going to have to rely a lot on Lee Morris, Reggie Gilliam, and kind of those sets. Because again, Dawson Knox out with the back/hip injury. Jordan Phillips, we all know he's out. Gabe Davis is questionable. Honestly, for me, I would slip Gabe Davis down because even in that Miami game, he did not look right. And the question is that even though he's playing, is he going to be considered more of a liability because of his injury status? Deion Dawkins, for the most part, is, not really unspecified, but, again, the fact that he was, he didn't practice sometimes, he was limited at times. Is that something to be concerned about? Not really too sure about it. Dane Jackson, is he going to play today? I think that's the question. Now, Christian Benford and Dane Jackson were kind of the 1-2 punch, but now it's Kiara Elam that's to step in because of Christian Benford's injury. But if it's not going to be Kiara Elam and Dane Jackson that's going to be playing tonight, it's going to be Kiara Elam and Cam Lewis. Now, Cam Lewis has been a veteran presence with Buffalo Bills for a while, but there's a reason why he's on the practice squad. There's a reason why he's considered more of an emergency cornerback than simply just the go-to guy. Now, if Cam Lewis was on any other team, Cam Lewis could potentially be fighting for not just a roster spot, but potentially for a starting spot. That's how deep Buffalo's quarterback room is. They're very, very loaded, and it's not just because of talent. It's because this scheme is so quarterback and safety friendly that players simply excel under the system, and again, their development as being a corner or a safety or nickel really starts to get better. It really starts to kind of transcends. So again, we run that base nickel front, and again, it really, really helps out their game. But it is concerning that, once again, Buffalo had a lot of guys that are either questionable or either doubtful or out. It is kind of concerning going against the Ravens football team that's hungry. I mean, the Ravens should have the same record as we have right now. Both teams should be 3-0. And one thing that we have in common is that we have a loss to the Miami Dolphins. So that is definitely something to kind of be concerned about when it comes to that aspect. Another thing I think we have to touch upon real quick is Josh Allen. Again, can Josh Allen, can he rebound? Can Josh Allen rebound, and can we have another performance? I think, again, that ties once again with the weather, with the whole weather-like situation, because this is going to be a rainy situation. And really, if you take a look at it, when it comes to nasty conditions, Josh Allen he's never played well in nasty conditions. Now, some people can go back and they'll say, well, he played well against the Chiefs. He played well against the Patriots. back when it was January games. He played well against the Colts in those weathery games. But I think if you take a look deep into some of those games that Josh Allen played, again, the Chiefs and the Patriots game, those weren't windy games. They were very, very cold games, but they weren't unbearable, right? They really weren't unbearable weather. Like against the Ravens game and the playoff game during the 2020 season, you're dealing with high mile power winds. You look at the Patriots game back in 2021, you're dealing with blizzard-like windy conditions. When you look at the Patriots, you look at the Chiefs, those were rainy conditions back in 2020. Josh Allen's really done well. Now, I'm not to sit here and say that Josh Allen is not a bad quarterback or anything like that. No, but I think that there's definitely more of a common factor. There's a trend going on here that this Bills offense, which is heavily reliant on Josh Allen, not just in the passing attack as far as distributing the football, but in rushing the football, where he's just not that good under these conditions. And I think the question is, we all know that Josh Allen can ball and he can play, but if he can't do well in these type of conditions, who do you rely upon? Do you rely upon Devon Singletary? Do you rely upon James Cook? Do you rely upon Zach Moss? And I understand that this offensive line is a little bit banged up, right? You still got question marks with Spencer Brown. You got some question marks about Mitch Morse. For the most part, Ryan Bates, for the most part, was dealing with concussion protocol, and with pretty much the scrutiny that's starting to get now. Do you even risk playing Ryan Bates? I think that's really the biggest question mark. So the offensive line is not going to be healthy. But even when this offensive line really was healthy, this is not a juggernaut team. This is not a juggernaut offensive line as far as running the football. So, again, that's going to be the key difference, and that's going to be the main difference between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, is that the Ravens are more than capable of rushing the football, especially in these conditions. They're used to that. Buffalo's not. And do the Ravens, do they know about it? Do they know about this? Do they take advantage of the situation? I think is going to be the biggest question mark going into this game. Again, I would love to see Devon Singletary get a lot of touches. I would love to see James Cook. Again, we drafted him in the second round. Did we just draft James Cook to primarily use as our receiving back? No, I don't think we primarily, draft him for our receiving back. Again, if we wanted a receiving back, we just draft a running back in the fourth, fifth round. Why not get a player like a Dameon Pierce? Why not even get a guy like Notre Dame's running back Tyrion, who Baltimore, by the way, drafted in the sixth? Kyron Williams, you could have drafted a receiving back in the sixth round. No, they wanted to use Dalvin Cook because he's extremely versatile. You can use him between the tackles. He's elusive. He's fast. He's a home run threat. That's the most important thing, something that Buffalo hasn't had, honestly, since LaShawn McCoy. You drafted these guys to ball, and, again, for James Cook to be the third string running back in this rotation is something that, honestly, I think you kind of have the question mark. When are we finally going to release James Cook, right? Again, great performance against last week against the Dolphins, but let's be honest, Dolphins were playing hot. We're pretty much playing every single version of cover two. They were not giving up the crossing routes. They weren't giving up the digs. They weren't giving up anything through the seam. They pretty much were giving up a lot of stuff underneath. They were forcing Josh Allen's offense to really give up a lot of pretty much you had to hit the underneath, because anything deep, anything beyond 15 to 20 yards, we're not going anywhere. If you're going to, if anything, you're going to hit your intermediate routes. We'll give you 5-6 yards of cushion, and then we'll try to stop you there. But we're not really giving up anything else. And that's why you saw Buffalo, despite having all those yards, still were not able to score on the Miami Dolphins. The Baltimore Ravens, I think, can take a look at that and maybe consider that more as a blueprint. And I think the question is, are they going to focus on that? I think that's a really key question. And James Cook, again, even though he had a great week, he had a great week against the Miami Dolphins, you don't want to primarily use him as your receiving back. You want to primarily use him as a guy that can run in between the tackles at the end of the day. And I feel like if they can do that with James Cook, that is something, and establish some success with not just only Cook, but obviously with Devon Singletary and Zach Moss, that can open up the passing attack, and that can open up what you can do. That's what Buffalo has struggled, honestly, especially dealing with these conditions that Ken Dorsey, Brian Dable, they have been just so adamant of just getting Josh Allen to have some sort of success, even when he's not having a bad day in these type of conditions. And I keep bringing the word up condition because again, we're dealing with the rain. We've never played well in these sort of weather games, at least offensively. Defensively, we've seen this step up. Matter of fact, we've seen the defense even win us games. We've seen the rushing attack at times, rare, but it's happened. We've never seen Josh Allen perform in these type of weather, and that is something that we have. And I'm just speaking that it is something that we have to think about, and I am speaking that is something that we might have to rely upon a little bit later down the line. Excuse me while I get my drink. I think another thing too that we have to talk about right here is game management situations. I think game management is definitely something that we might honestly have to consider. Big reason why for game management situations is because I think a lot of people have been questioning what Sean McDermott has been able to do over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Really years. Like you look at the Jaguars game in the playoffs, the Texans game in the playoffs. Some of the biggest moments, some of the biggest games that Buffalo has lost, I think Sean McDermott has been questioned about his game management situations, whether he's been too conservative, right? He's always had that reputation of being a way to, really conservative head coach when it comes to game management situations. Now he's been known as the coach that's gone a little bit too aggressive. Maybe he's had more faith in his offense. As far as maybe going for field goals, as far as taking the field goal, he's decided to really go for it with his offense. Now, rightfully so. The Buffalo Bills were 2 for 3 when it comes to fourth down conversions. But that one fourth down conversion we didn't get, Buffalo could have went ahead and got a field goal, and that could have been the difference. So now Sean McDermott has had this reputation. I mean, really, you can't win, right? Whether he's too conservative or he's too aggressive. I don't really care about the decision making. I actually like the confidence of a head coach having that much confidence in your offense because he's trying to play to win. He's not trying to play for any sort of conservativeness. He's trying to win these games. So I don't mind the aggression. However, it is situations as far as calling timeouts, as far as play calling direction, as far as kind of management, that's the type of stuff that we can have a conversation about later on. But again, since everyone wants to talk about it, it is something that we have to highlight. It is game management situations. What can Buffalo do to try to get that right? To try to get that situation cleared up, I think is going to be one of the biggest question marks, I think, going in to this game. Again, I'm expecting a close game, guys. I'm not expecting a shootout. I'm not expecting Josh Allen to dominate in fantasy points. I'm not expecting Lamar Jackson to dominate in fantasy points today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm expecting a slobber knocker, right? Jim, to quote the great Jim Ross for WWE, I'm expecting a slobber knocker. I'm expecting a 17, 20-ish type of game. Honestly, I'm expecting a very close quarters game. When I take a look at rainy conditions, I'm expecting Baltimore's going to run the ball heavily. They're going to do some RPO based, but they're going to run the ball. And I'm expecting Josh Allen and this offense to have some struggles passing the football because guess what? We're just not a run first team. We're not relying on that. We're simply a team that's going to throw the football. And depending if we run 5 sets, depending if we run a lot of 12, if we run some 13, no matter what we try to run, I feel like Josh Allen is going to have a struggle. He's going to have a struggle throughout these conditions, not just because of the rain, but also because we have to consider the Ravens defense is getting healthy. The Ravens defense is getting healthier, right? Justin Houston's is going to be out. That's a big loss. But Elias Campbell, he's going to be making an impact. He's been hurt. He's getting healthier. We saw Marlon Humphrey being able to make plays, and there's a reason why he's considered an all-pro cornerback. Marcus Peters is also a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback, more in his older years, but a guy that's continuing to get better and better and better as he starts to kind of, really start to get into his form. So if you are the Buffalo Bills and if you're Ken Dorsey, how do you game plan around trying to get these players open? Because I can guarantee you this, the Ravens, I honestly believe they're going to play up. Again, I remember back in 2019 where the Ravens were infamous because they played cover 0 against Josh Allen. And it was one of the funniest games I think you actually have to imagine because you're like, what are we doing? Why are they playing cover 0? Do they not respect Josh Allen? Do they not respect his deep ball? Absolutely not. They don't respect him. I'm not saying that they're going to play cover 0 here, but can I expect some cover 5? Can I expect some cover 2 hard shell and just bring everybody up? I can probably expect it, honestly. This is going to be a Ravens secondary where I think they know they can't play conservative against Josh Allen. I think very similar to the Dolphins game, they're going to have to play pretty aggressive. they're going to have to make on-field adjustments and say, you know what, we can take away the dig, we can take away the crossing routes, we can take away throws up the seam. We're not going to allow what Buffalo does. If anything, we can give up underneath. That's about it. But we've seen before that Buffalo's red zone offense, especially against the capable defense, is something that Buffalo can struggle with. Now, the good thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Ravens defense, it's not Miami, right? Miami has one of the best red zone defenses, just one of the best defenses, period, in the National Football League. They're not going to go against that better red zone defense than Miami, at least right now in this current form. Baltimore's defense ranks 29th right now in the National Football League. They have one of the best. They have one of the worst passing attacks in the National Football League. Rushing defense has been okay, but let's be honest, they really haven't faced anybody that has a great rushing attack besides the New England Patriots. And even them, they were able to kind of do what they wanted to do. Not rushing for 300 yards, but still having some semblance of success. But their passing defense has been suspect. Even when they had Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters in the game, yes, they forced 3 turnovers. But they still gave up a lot of yards, which means that Josh Allen is going to have his opportunities. Josh Allen is going to have his chances to ball out. And the question is that who from the receiver side, especially if Gabriel Davis, we all know Jake Kumerow is not going to be playing, but if Gabriel Davis doesn't play, who's going to step up for you, right? Isaiah Hodgins is a chance that he can be activated. Khalil Shakir, kind of the same thing. We all know Stephon Diggs is going to be a guy that Marlon Humphrey is going to be shadowing for the majority of this game. But the biggest question mark, I think, is who's going to step up for Buffalo for Josh Allen, who's going to really help him out the most. Because honestly, your leading receivers can't be James Cook and Devon Singletary. It just can't happen in that sort of situation. So that's definitely something that if you're honestly a Bills fan, you honestly have to try to highlight here. Another thing that I think we have to talk about real quick, we have a couple topics that I think we could talk about before we can kind of get out of here. Is I think number one here. What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen, honestly, with Buffalo's offensive line unit? Buffalo's offensive line unit took probably one of the worst turns I think I've seen for the Buffalo Bills in a while as far as injuries. Ryan Bates, again, was in concussion protocol, and he still is. And I think he still is in concussion protocol. I haven't released the game updates about it. If anybody is in the chat, you guys can let me know if he's ready to go. But Spencer Brown, had heat exhaustion. I don't think that's going to really carry over, but that's something that we can honestly take a look at and implement. Has he fully recovered from the illness he suffered in Miami? Obviously Roger Saffold was banged up. We had Bobby Brown. For the most part, Bobby Hart's going to be back. Bobby Hart was our backup guard. So if Ryan Bates can't go, then you're going to have to rely upon Bobby Hart, see if he can step in at right guard. I remember we had a third string guy in there, and even he was banged up. I mean, it was a rough day for Buffalo's offensive line, but we're going to have to take a look at the health because we've seen in certain situations where when Buffalo wasn't comfortable, when Buffalo tried to run some of their plays, it seemed like Ken Dorsey just did not really have any confidence. Like I know some goal line situations, we were in a lot of shotgun. And I'm sitting here and I'm yelling at my TV. I'm like, why not quarterback sneak with Josh Allen? And I thought about it. I'm like, well, you know what? We've already tried something. We've already tried things under center, and it's always been muff. Josh Allen has struggled with the backup center when it came to under center snaps at one end. Some of it was on Josh, but a lot of it also was on the backup center. And I wonder that is, again, there is a lack of confidence in some of our backup offensive linemen for us to do what we want to do. If going into this game, if Mitch Morse doesn't play, if Ryan Bates doesn't really play, if Spencer Brown continues to struggle at right tackle, what's going to happen to this offensive line? Because, again, Josh, one thing that I will just say this real quick, guys, is that this team is really reliant, extremely reliant on Josh Allen. It is Josh Allen, and if he does not play well, that's pretty much the game. That's a problem. And honestly, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore has to kind of deal with the same thing. It's Lamar Jackson, and if he doesn't play well, they've simply lost the game. Now, the rushing attack can come in clutch sometimes, and we've seen the rushing attack come up big. Buffalo, for the most part, if a rushing attack is going to win the game, my left leg is not going to be on my body. I mean, seriously, it is very rare to see the Buffalo Bills win without Josh Allen. That's why that Patriots game when we first beat them still shocks me to this damn day. Because Zach Moss and Devon Singletary were two guys that really went off in that game, and it was a very, very big part to the offensive line. And it was just so refreshing to see the physicality and how they were able to dominate the Patriots defensive front off the line of scrimmage. Buffalo, I think offensive line is capable of doing it. I think that's why you brought in Roger Saffold, more of an enforcer. But you still have to deal with a certain amount of injuries that Buffalo's offensive line has to deal with. And let's be honest, I just feel like it's a little unrealistic to expect Buffalo's rushing attack, if Josh Allen can't go, to just all of a sudden fall upon an injured offensive line. I just don't think it's going to happen. So one of the last things I'll say before we kind of can get out of here is that if Buffalo wins this game, great. They'll be 3-1. They'll be on top. They'll be 3-1. They wouldn't necessarily be on top of the division, but I think a lot of question marks. A lot of people are saying, well, Buffalo is this, or Buffalo is a team that is not that great of a football squadron and stuff like that. I feel like that can be laid to rest at least for another week, right? Buffalo's, again, a lot of people, and if you notice this, a lot of fan bases don't like the Bills. And remember, like 2 to 3 years ago, Buffalo was the most beloved fan base in all of sports. Now we're the most hated fan base because of our expectations. Well, when the media has been hyping us the way that it's been hyped, when we have the roster that we have, when we have arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, if not the best quarterback in the National Football League, you're damn right we're going to have expectations of reaching to a Super Bowl, especially because the last couple of years we have been we've been right there. Like, we see Mount Everest, we see the top of Mount Everest. We're there. Something is just, it's really been one team. But it's just been certain situations which has just been knocking us, and we've been so close of reaching at the peak of Mount Everest. So, again, excuse us if we have unrealistic expectations. However, I will say this, ladies and gentlemen. Whether if we win this game or not, it's not going to dictate our season, right? Last week, I would have loved to have that Dolphins game because that's a divisional game. That's a very important game. You just don't have a lot of divisional opponents. We'll see Miami back in December, though, to try to see if we can right that wrong, but you don't want to lose any more divisional games. You don't really want to lose any conference games either. However, if we lose this game, the most important part for me, that even if we do lose, is can we get healthy? Because Buffalo is banged up, right? Baltimore is at least starting to get healthier. Buffalo is losing a lot of players, and and to be fair, that's what Baltimore had to deal with last year. That's what the Saints had to deal with last year, and those were two rosters that had Super Bowl championship contending rosters. I'm hoping that we don't go down this path. I'm hoping that, for the most part, the football gods are on our side. However, the most important part that I feel like, again, we have to consider is, can we get healthy? And if we can start to get healthier, and if we can start to incorporate what made us great in the first couple of weeks, it's what's going to make us a dangerous football squad. Again, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we have 13 weeks. We have 13 weeks of the regular season. We have a long regular season to go. And as long as we got that man Josh Allen, as long as we have the coaching staff we have, as long as we got the front house that we have, and as long as we can continue to get better, as long as we continue to get healthier, Buffalo is going to be fine in the long run, despite the result of tonight. So definitely kind of keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. But Bills versus Ravens, 1 o'clock kickoff if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast, I understand the morning time, but you guys are going to be getting up anyway. And if you're on the Central time, it's going to be on 12 o'clock Central. Definitely make sure to catch and tune into the game. The game will be on CBS. It will actually be the main game, so you guys don't have to worry about, depending on where you are. I know a lot of people, they're not located in New York State. A lot of Bills fans are not located in New York State, so no matter where you are, that's going to be the main game. So definitely keep that in mind. Also, shout out to BuffaloFanbase.com. Shout out to Buffalo Fanbase, really the entire network ran Bills Mafia all the way for the most part. There's a lot of excellent content creators. So definitely stick tuned to the post-game show, because there's a post-game show after the Bills game, after the Bills Ravens goes off, 4:30 through 5. So definitely make sure to catch and tune for that. Make sure to like the video, subscribe the video, and also, ladies and gentlemen, visit BuffaloFanbase.com, because for the most part, we got merchandise and a lot more people. And again, supporting content creators is something that we definitely want to do here at BuffaloFanbase.com. Also, to Hurricane Ian support relief, I'll just bring that up real quick. There has been a lot of stuff when it comes to Hurricane Ian. Obviously, it's devastated a lot of the homes for a lot of people. I have a lot of people that I know that live in the state of Florida. So again, our thoughts and prayers goes out to the people that live in Florida, to their families as well. And again, if you guys can support, whether if it's a penny, whether if it's $1, whatever it is, whatever the amount is, any sort of amount is going to really help the cause for the people that's suffering because of Hurricane Ian out there. But anyway, guys, this is Jan Sports from Buffalo Fanbase, and we'll be catching you guys later. Thank you guys so much for catching us, and we'll see you guys out.